It's time to get the story behind the story. Interviews with newsmakers, news breakers, and Vermonters making a difference. WCAX presents 802 News with Mark Johnson. Here's Mark.
Approximately 4,000 people a year receive a heart transplant in the United States. This year, Burlington attorney Walter Judge was one of them. In this edition of 802 News, sponsored by Red Hen Baking Company, Judge recounts his experience. Next year, he hopes to get a new kidney. Both were damaged because of his heart problems.
I was actually in the middle of a deposition on January 22nd. It was a normal workday for me, except that the deposition was off-site. I had to travel to Bellows Falls to take this doctor's deposition, or this expert's deposition. He was hired by the plaintiff's attorney to give an opinion about his client's condition. I had heartburn, and I didn't understand it because it was like first thing in the morning. I didn't eat Tabasco sauce for breakfast. Like, what the hell? But I powered through the deposition like, okay, heartburn, so what? Got through the deposition like in the middle of the afternoon and started the drive back to Burlington. I was actually with someone, another attorney in town, Devin McKnight. We were on the same side of the case, so we were both asking this doctor questions. And we either came back in my car, I think it was his car, he drove, I think. We got back to Burlington, and I had bad heartburn on the trip back. And we got to my driveway, and, it was the end of the day. I wasn't going to come into the office. I was just going to go in the house for the night. And I realized, thanks for dropping me off, Devin. I got in my car. I didn't go into the house. I didn't talk to my wife. It's probably 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I drove straight to UVM because by that point, I knew it was the weirdest case of bad heartburn that anyone ever had. But I didn't have these other symptoms like, an elephant sitting on my chest and I can't breathe and my arm feels weird and I'm drooling. So I drove myself to the hospital. I didn't necessarily think I was having a heart issue. I got to the hospital, checked in, and by the way, there's all the same people that all the EMTs complain about, right? In the emergency room, like that they've revived 5 times that day and brought to the emergency room. They're all sitting in the chairs, and I'm sitting in the chairs, and I register at the front desk, and then I go to the bathroom, and my pee looks very weird. Like, uh-oh, how is this connected to my heartburn? So I knew something was wrong. So they call me in.
Blood? Discolored?
It looked like it was blood.
Okay.
Dark tea colored. Typically, okay, you got occult blood in your pee. So they call me into the emergency room and wheel me in. And that's the last thing I remember at that point, right? They put me under. And I think it was Dr. Kane or Dr. Pocross. A number of cardiologists and surgeons worked on me, and they put what's called an impella. It's a pump in my chest right here. I mean, this is all stuff I discovered when I woke up a few days later, right? My wife was there, and I was under, and my wife said Dr. Kane told her, "That's the most clogged heart I've ever seen." So I got that going for me, right? So I wake up a few days later. But the news I got when I eventually woke up and they took that thing out of my throat, right? That breathing tube, which was disgusting. Cough. And, they yanked it out when I coughed. And they said, you need a new heart. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? I came in here with heartburn. And they said, yeah, you came in here with a heart that was functioning at like 25%. And there's no fixing it. It was like, I said, you can't do like a quadruple $1 million, bypass. And they're like, not on that heart. You need a new one. So we're going to have to send you somewhere where they give you new hearts. And so they sent me to Tufts. The doctors at UVM, I was there for a week. A lot of it I don't remember. The doctors and the nurses at UVM were awesome, just awesome. But so they sent me by ambulance, it turned. I remember it being a very long trip in the ambulance, but the ambulance drivers were a hoot, and I was awake and chatting with them. Right, there's a guy in the front who's driving the ambulance to Tufts, and like bump, 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 and I'm in the back talking to two EMTs. Right, what do you do, Walter? Oh, I'm a lawyer. Oh, well, I need you to sue somebody for me. And I was like, okay, well, when I get back from Tufts, if I ever get back from Tufts, we'll talk. So they sent me to Tufts, and the first night I was there, they put me on a pretty good course of fentanyl, I think, right? I went delusional, and apparently this is not terribly unusual. I woke up in the middle of the night, tied to the bed, and these two nurses were there, and I was like, what are you guys doing? Let me go. I need to get out of here. You guys. And I thought like a drug ring was like happening, and I was, kidnapped and stuff like that. And so they said, can we call your wife? And I said, yeah, call my wife. And so they called my wife, and they put me on the phone, and I said, they're holding me against my will. And she said, Walter, just do whatever they say. And I was very skeptical. Maybe it wasn't her, or maybe she was in on it. And so I recovered from that, and then I was at Tufts for 2 months or 2 months plus. But I said to him later, I said, I'm sorry about my weird behavior, and they're like, we see it from time to time, and they said it was probably the fentanyl. Have you ever had fentanyl before? And I was like, no, yep. No. So then I was there for a month with the pump. And like constant beeping of the machine, right? Beep, beep, beep. And I said, so what's going to happen? And they said, well, you're going to stay here until you're ready for a heart transplant, and we have a heart for you. And that took a month. And so during that month, I'm in like the pre-surgery unit, like you need to get your exercise, and so walk around the unit, and here's the walker, and do some stretching exercises, and blah, blah. And I was on a special diet, and I was on these special drugs, which I'm still on. And I'm talking to the doctors who would occasionally come in, and they would say, well, we're looking for a heart. We're waiting for a heart to come in. And I would say, well, how long do I have? And they're like, well, it's true the Impella is degrading because it doesn't have an indefinite lifespan. And if it fails before we find you a heart, you could die. And I was like, okay, so, at least I have some insight into the future. So one day, Dr. Cooper comes in, chief heart guy. He comes in one Saturday night, and he says, we got a heart for you, Walter, and I'm going to come back at 2 o'clock in the morning and put it in you. So they come in at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was sound asleep. They woke me up and wheeled me into the surgery room. The short version of the story is I was out of surgery by like sometime in the morning, which in retrospect, I was like, how did you do that in like 4 hours? And, the answer is, I do 2 a week of these. It's like opening a book or turning on the TV, not to minimize, because I was like, you are a miracle worker. This is unbelievable. So there's 2 doctors at Tufts who do heart transplants. Like there's all kinds of other doctors I saw. Like I saw a cardiologist after a cardiologist, but these are the 2 guys who actually cut you open, take out your old heart and put in the new one. And they can't take vacations at the same time, and they can't so they do like about 100 a year between the 2 of them. Unbelievable, right? Machines. These guys are machines, and they're not like the little I saw of Dr. Cooper. I mean, that's the interesting part about it, right? Like I said, I'm constantly surrounded by doctors and nurses when I'm at Tufts, both before and after the transplant, right? Dr. Cooper, I saw him like once, which was to come in and fetch me for the operation. And then like later on one time, I saw him in the hallway. Hey, Dr. Cooper, how are you? Hey, Walter, how's your heart? He has one job and one job only, and he does it really well. Cut you open and put your new heart in. No pain at any time, ever. Nope, never had any pain. But I could feel afterwards, I could feel where they had, cut through the sternum and, wired it back together. And it wasn't quite unionized yet. So they're like, don't lift that, Walter. Don't get up without telling us. Don't get out of bed without telling us, blah, blah, blah. Don't, reach for that thing because you're going to tear your sternum apart. So I had to be careful about that. But I remember being wheeled into the surgery room. And that's about it. But it was a well-lit room. It was, industrial. It had like these neon lights. And I do remember becoming semi-conscious during the operation. And it was crazy. Like, I'm hearing these voices. I couldn't tell what they were saying, but every once in a while I hear like snickering or laughing or whatever. And there was multiple voices. And I could see the lights above me. I'm obviously on my back, just the way I came in, and I'm looking up. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I can't see my chest, but it must be awfully messy for these guys. But I was thinking, but it seemed to last a long time that I was like aware of the voices. And obviously at some point, one of the doctors must have said, oh, this guy's coming out of it. We better like crank up the... And so then I stopped having the memory. But I was thinking at the time, they told me that I could die. They gave me the warning, every surgery is complicated and, there's no guarantee you'll survive and blah, blah, blah. I think they actually quantified it. Like, you have an 8% chance of not getting out of this. And I said, okay, well, I have a 100% chance of dying if you don't do it. And when I felt this feeling of like hearing the voices and seeing the lights, I was like, whoa, this must be what dying feels like. And now I'm so sad because I'm going to die. And then, I'm back unconscious again. And then I wake up, 12 hours later in the recovery room and everything seems to be fine. And, if I could have gotten down and kissed the floor, I would have, but yeah, I was immobilized for a while, but it was quite shocking. It was quite shocking.
You had no history of heart disease in your family?
Well, it turns out it's a little bit vague. My father died at 60 of a heart attack, but he had smoked all his life. Marlboro Reds and like the rest of his family smoked like unfiltered cigarettes. It was a horror show. And I think back on it now as a kid. I lived in, my grandparents lived, in the apartment underneath us. And I would go down there all the time just because that's where my grandparents lived. And, they smoked like chimneys. Everyone in the family smoked like chimneys. But I didn't attribute my father's heart attack to something that would affect me, other than the fact that I look back on it now, I'm like, hey, I was exposed to like tons of secondhand smoke. But he might have had a condition that made like smoking even worse. He may have had a congenital heart. So the doctor at UVM, as I mentioned, said, oh, this is like one of the most clogged hearts I've ever seen, or the most clogged heart I've ever seen. I think it was congenital on my father's side of the family. But I didn't know that my heart was that bad. Now, part of it's my own fault. I didn't live a very healthy lifestyle before my so-called heart attack. The doctors call it a myocardial infarction that happened to me on January 22nd, but it didn't feel like, I wasn't grabbing my chest and going, oh, I can't breathe, what's going on? But they do call it a heart attack.
We'll continue our discussion with heart transplant recipient Walter Judge right after this. At Red Hen Baking Company, they believe pure, uncomplicated ingredients in the hands of skilled artisans are the building blocks for great food. They're dedicated to creating the best food from the best ingredients. You'll find an ever-changing lineup of delicious pastries, sandwiches, and soups at their beautiful cafe off Route 2 in Middlesex, just off I-89. Their breads are also available in many other locations. Led by owners Randy George and Eliza Kane, Red Hen Baking Company has been on the leading edge of the local food movement since 1999. Continuing our discussion with Walter Judge, who received a heart transplant earlier this year. Do you know whose heart you got?
Great question. I do not yet, and I don't know if I ever will. So one of the things about the donor program, it's a very organized medical program, and certain people go higher on the list, certain people go lower on the list. The people at Tufts, of course, you're at the right place for them to get you high on the list or as high as you can go, because they can certify, this guy's got 3 days. Many people consider it miraculous that I was only at Tufts for a month before a heart came in. Some people wait 6 months, some people wait a year, and the doctors they were telling me, it could be a year, Walter. And I'm like, yeah, but this machine is making more beeps every day, and and one doctor looked. He was in my office. He was in my room, and I said, "What's going to happen if this fails? This pump fails, and the heart's not here?" And the poor guy, he just looked down at the floor, and he said, "Oh, you might die." And I was like, "Hey, doc, don't be so glum." So something will happen, and something did happen. And the donor program works that you do not know who the donor is. And they do that on purpose. I've been carrying around in my bag that I carry every day, with this got my medications in it and all the other things I have to have, a little card that, and this is, I'm ashamed to say it, I've been very, very busy since I got out of the hospital with appointments and, dialysis appointments and doctor's appointments. And I work part-time. But I carry this card in my bag, and it's so I can write to the family of the person who gave me the heart. And I won't be able to address it to any particular person. I can only address it to the donor organization. They pass it along to the family, and the family can choose to contact me, again, through the donor organization or not. No hard feelings if they don't contact me. And there's all kinds of things going on in the background. They may not know that until he or she died, they may not have known that their daughter or son was an organ donor. They may not even approve or have approved of that. But, it is what it is. The only thing I do know, and this is kind of funny, and they didn't tell me this at the time. Dr. Cooper, the surgeon, didn't tell me this, at least not that I remember. There's a lot of things they might have said that I don't remember. But a few appointments later, a few checkups later, I was asking this very question, whose heart is this? And they said, we don't know. We only know it's a 40-year-old heart. And I'm like, okay, that's young, much younger than the one I had. So it's, I got good mileage on it coming up. They said it could be a man's or it could be a woman's. And I said, what do you mean it could be a woman's? The only thing that matters, Walter, is it's the right size for your body. And it's effective and it's functioning. And we examine it obviously before we accept it. And it looked like, a good heart. We kicked the tires and it looked good and we put it in. And I said, okay, that's great. And in fact, it's worked like a charm ever since the day I got it. So I go back for these, now monthly appointments, which, by the way, it gets to be a pain in the ass after a while. 4-hour drive to Boston. I have to stay over at a hotel because the appointments are all first thing in the morning, right? Which means, either I get up and drive straight to Boston at 3 o'clock in the morning, which I ain't going to do, or, I go down the night before. Right after dialysis, I jump in the car and I drive to Boston, right? And I stay at a hotel that's across the street from the hospital. I am as familiar with the inside of Tufts Medical Center as the doctors and nurses who work there, by the way.
Okay, but But you're alive.
I'm alive, yeah. So I shouldn't complain about having to take the trip to Boston.
Yeah.
So at first, they were testing my heart for rejection.
Okay.
They still test it for rejection, but they test it a different way now. At first, they tested it for rejection by doing a biopsy. And I don't know how this works, but like they're testing it for cellular rejection, right? So I said, what are you doing? And they said, well, we're threading a catheter up your groin or down your neck or whatever. Don't worry, you'll be sedated. And we're going to go into your heart and we're going to snip off a tiny little piece. And then we'll put it in lab fluid and we'll test it and we'll see if there's any rejection. And the good news is that there's never been any rejection.
Do you feel different? Do you notice a difference between now and a year and a half ago?
Well, I definitely feel like better, right? But among other things, I'm like 35 pounds lighter. I do feel more energetic. You know, the interesting thing about it is like I got lucky in the sense that I could actually drive myself to the hospital and not crash on the way. But like that winter, so this is January 22nd, right? There had been multiple snow events earlier that winter, and I'm out there shoveling, and I didn't have a heart attack in my driveway.
Wow.
That's the lucky part, because it sounds like, yeah, you probably could have and you probably should have had a heart attack in your driveway while you're shoveling, but I didn't. They eventually stopped having to do the rejection testing by doing a biopsy, and they can now do it by testing chemicals in my blood. So I go back every month, and I have to take 4 pills a day. My phone alarms me in case I forget that it's time to take another set of pills. I have a pill box. I have to refill every week. They adjust them occasionally. Hey, Walter, they call me up on the phone. You can ease up on this, but like now we're putting you on this. And I'm like, okay. So I have to take a lot of pills, and I'll be on the main pills probably for the rest of my life, the anti-rejection medications. So obviously there's an ongoing kidney issue. And I said, hey, docs, come on, I'm here. And they're like, no, we want to wait for a year. After the year anniversary of your heart replacement. We want to wait till like we know. And by the way, you know, like kidney surgery doesn't mean you couldn't die in surgery. And we don't, you know, we got a heart to protect. So they insist that I wait a year. But the good news is they have this thing called a safety net. So as soon as they declare me ready for a kidney transplant, I go to the top of the list, and a kidney could show up right away. Because they told me all this, there was such a correlation between heart failure and kidney failure that they just used to do them both at the same time essentially in the same surgery. And they were finding that some people didn't need a kidney, and they were essentially wasting a surgery and wasting a kidney. So they stopped giving everyone a heart and a kidney at the same time. But the quid pro quo for that was, well, if the kidney that Walter has doesn't recover, which mine haven't, he shouldn't be penalized and then wait 10 years for a kidney. So they have this system now where, like, if we don't want to risk giving you an unnecessary kidney at the time we give you the heart, but we do find that your kidneys don't recover and you need a kidney later, you'll go to the top of the list. So as soon as I am cleared by the heart care team, okay, it's been a year, nothing's going wrong with the heart, you're okay for the kidney transplant. As soon as I'm cleared, they said, you should have a bag packed because we could call you, like, and you have to be here like within 12 hours or something, because the kidney's going to be waiting. It doesn't last forever, and we'll need to put it in. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. So that'll happen. So my first year anniversary is February 28th. It'll be potentially as soon as possible after that. The other thing is I was a clogged artery person, right? I was a clogged heart person. That's why I had the heart failure. During my stay at Tufts, before I had my heart transplant, they did CT scans, blah, 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 and they found out you got 2 very clogged carotid arteries. These are the arteries delivering
To your brain.
blood to your brain. Fortunately, you have arteries in the back. We got to do that too.
So
No.
does any of this scare you?
Well, I'll tell you, I was a little bit scared of the heart surgery, right? Because they said, I got to tell you, there's an 8% chance. There's usually a lower chance than 8%, Walter, but with your comorbidities, there could be a higher chance because they discovered during my wait for the heart that maybe I had a stroke. Because they're doing testing all the time during this wait-up period to the heart transplant, right? And at one point I said to him, no, I feel fine, but it's weird. The clock on the wall across the room, like the 9 is blinking. And they got all like bug-eyed. And they're like, so you're having vision problems in your left eye, Walter? Well, I can see everything fine, but like this blinking in the number 9 just won't go away on the clock. And they're like, okay, we're going to get you a CT scan. And this was, again, before the heart transplant. So what they said was, CT, like there's a little thing in the back of your brain, and that may be what's causing the slight vision issue. I had no other symptoms. Like, I knew what day it was. I knew what my birthday was. I knew who my relatives' names were. I knew where I was. But they took the slight blinking issue in the left eye as a sign. As, they're professionals. They know what they're doing. They know what the indicators are. And sure enough, they found like a very slight blockage in the back of my brain. To get back to your original question, was I scared? By the time of I'd been in the hospital waiting for a heart, listening to this beeping next to me of my, pump device, like degrading and degrading and degrading. I was like, I was a little scared, but I was like, dude, just get this done, right? If you're going to die on the operating table, it's better than dying, in the hospital bed, like watching it happen, right?
Yeah.
So I was a little bit scared, but this kidney thing and this vascular surgery, it's like, no, just, I need it to happen. It's like the Bionic Man. We can rebuild them. So I'll have a new heart, I'll have a new kidney, and I'll have my carotid arteries. I said to the vascular doctor, I'll have increased blood flow to my brain, right? When you unclog the arteries. And he said, yeah. And that's the whole point. And I said, will I be smarter? And he was like, no, Walter, that's not how it works. And I was like, oh, well, that's kind of disappointing because I could use it.
Are you different?
I feel a little more slow.
No, I don't mean that way. Are you a different? Have you been changed by this whole experience?
Well, people said, people who came to visit me in the hospital after my heart transplant, they said, oh, you're nicer.
Because they do describe you here on the website as tenacious.
You checked it out. I was tenacious, and I'd like to think I'd still be tenacious. I'm working part-time. I haven't tried doing something like my own, like taking a deposition again. I think I could. But it was always work for me, and it would be work again. Like, I'm not one of these people who just walks in and says, okay, here's a doctor. I know what to ask him. It's the same thing every time. No, I prepare. My depositions are thorough and good, and I'm not wasting it. But it's hard work. The question is, like, am I different? When I was in the hospital, they said, oh, you're so nice. You're so nice, And maybe it was the drugs I was on. Who knows? Maybe it was because I felt like, okay, I've outlived, a bad heart, and work doesn't matter anymore. So I don't need to be, the tenacious litigator who's always snarling at people, trying to get them to answer my questions. Who cares? I don't, I was thinking at the time, I don't care if I ever go back to work. Who needs that? I'm thinking about all the things I could do for the rest of my life. I rarely went on vacations. I did all the things that hardworking type A lawyers are famous for doing, right? Work till 6:30 every night, work on weekends. My firm was very good. So January 22nd, I disappeared, right? And after a few days, they heard that I was up at UVM and they freaked out, and they've been incredibly supportive. So I championed them for that. All I did was get cards and letters and visitors at UVM from the firm. Walter, how you doing? It's all about your health. It's not about your work. So they transferred all my cases to other very capable people here who are capable and willing to take them on. Now I'm back to working part-time. But, the truth is I've slowed down substantially. My caseload is down. I'm consulting with my colleagues on their cases, some of which used to be my cases before the heart attack. And I'm getting new cases coming in. I'm handling it. But it is tough, 3 days a week in dialysis, 3 days a week in cardiac rehab, and then trying to work part-time. And going to medical appointments. It's a strenuous schedule.
It's a job.
It's a job.
Yeah.
I'm trying to squeeze work in around dialysis and around cardiac rehab. The cardiac rehab I'll probably keep doing. It's paid for by insurance, 36 weeks of cardiac rehab up at Tilly Drive, right? And I'm kind of getting used to it. It's I should have been doing this before.
Right. Being
on the treadmill and lifting weights and stuff like that. And Walter, you should have been doing this before. That's not so much of an issue for me, so much so that I'm going to start when my, paid for cardiac rehab is done in a couple of weeks, actually less than a week. I've done 36 visits or close to 36 visits. That's the amount that's paid for. I'm going to sign up to go to the same gym for $40 a month voluntarily, because $40 is cheap, and they have all the equipment that I should be using, and there'll be doctors and nurses at this gym, right? And I can keep going for the Medicare rate of $40 a month. Where else are you going to go where there's this equipment and doctors and nurses who are waiting for you to fall down?
Is the grass any greener? Do the flowers smell any better?
Well, yeah, before the snowfall started, which,
that's not what I mean. That.
That's the other issue, which is, okay, you're sitting in the hospital going, I don't care about work anymore. All I care about is the fact that I'm alive, right? And I need to do all the SHIT that I knew I should have been doing, I wanted to do, except I went to work every day instead. Go on nice vacations, spend more time with my family. That's the important stuff. I definitely had an epiphany like that. The danger is not to let that feeling slip away and get back into the routine. Once I get the kidney transplant and I'm disconnected from a machine for the rest of my life, hopefully, I can go to the beach. I can go to the Caribbean. I can go to Europe.
What's your prognosis? How long do they say?
Oh, so they give you the new heart, and of course Tufts is proud of its statistics, right? My prognosis is, as long as I don't catch some terrible, deadly dengue fever, is 20 or more years or longer with this heart, as long as I take care of it.
What'd you learn here?
Well, I look at I look at people and I say, dude, you're out of shape. You need to do something about that. Because you do not want what I got. You do not want what I got. I'm like the luckiest guy. I'm like Lou Gehrig. I'm Lazarus. I rose from the dead, because I was in my hospital bed at Tufts pre-transplant thinking, this is it. I'm not getting out of here alive. Some of that I could have had some control over with, a better lifestyle before. Some of it, maybe not. Maybe because, some people just have bad genes, and some people have a family history of bad hearts, and blah, blah, blah. And some people's families, everyone dies early. But I look at people and I say, don't do what I did before I had my heart transplant. Dude, get out there and get exercise, and don't go, from a stressful day at work every frickin' day of your life and just then go and have a couple of pops at the bar before you go home. No.
If I asked your wife what this whole experience has been like, and if you're any different, what would she tell me?
She and my mother and my family would say, yeah, after you had the surgery, you were a much happier, nicer guy than you were before. And, I'm concerned that by going back into my everyday lifestyle, including my law job, I might be slipping back into old bad habits. But she would say that, yeah, you're happier. I was certainly ecstatic that I woke up from surgery, and they told me everything went well. You're alive and you're going to keep living. That's all that mattered. That's all that mattered at that time. Now it's I got to go to work. I got to do this. I got to do that. I'm I'm aware of the fact that I shouldn't be having those thoughts. I should not be having those thoughts. But old habits die hard.
That wraps it up for this edition of 802 News, sponsored by Red Hand Baking Company. Happy holidays, and thanks for listening.